Alrighty, folks, I'm calling it. The next drug epidemic is upon us. It won't be declared officially by the media, by 60 Minutes, by Good Morning America, and all of the other media outlets who love to get off on so-called drug epidemics, whether it be the crack epidemic, I'm putting these in scare quotes, the opioid epidemic, or the coming meth epidemic. Now, some of you may have noticed the related and perhaps related, wait, what's a good way of putting it, the preceding epidemic of white women on TikTok complaining about various things, as they usually do, such as Adderall not working like it used to, or Adderall being unavailable at the pharmacy. We're hearing now that Washington, D.C., land of mentally disabled, affluent white people, the city is about 2 or 3 days away from completely running out of Adderall. And this has already led to chaos. Addicts are turning over sofas and knocking over convenience stores, anything they can do to get their fix. And no, I don't want to come out flat out and say definitively that Adderall is just meth. That seems to be mostly a meme. I've actually tried to look into this before. Taking the Adderall peddlers, the dealers, who have an interest in claiming that Adderall is not meth. According to them, the difference is that Adderall doesn't pass the blood-brain barrier, which sounds like a big difference. I do understand that the molecular compound is different. There is one molecule on methamphetamine that is not present on regular amphetamine. But I'm not a chemist, and I'm not a doctor, so I can't exactly tell you how important that molecule is, but it makes sense to me on an intellectual level. Yeah, if you have slightly different compounds, they can be very different substances. Carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, those are different things. I get that. But even if the Adderall junkies don't think that they're addicted to meth, that does not mean that they're not going to turn to meth when their drug of choice is no longer available. Because they're not going to have a choice. If there's no more Adderall, they're going to have to turn to the streets. And when you try and buy some speed off of, T-Bone in a back alley, oftentimes those are just meth pills. And even though, the doctors, the dealers, the pharma bros like to tell us that, Adderall is not like meth. It's not what it's totally, it's a pharmaceutical drug. You get it at the pharmacy. It can't be bad for you. It's not like that gross stuff that, it makes people's teeth rot out. No, not at all. Nobody gets meth mouth from Adderall. Well, guess what? Meth was invented as a pharmaceutical drug too. I mean, it was something that you didn't even need a prescription for. You just walk into the general store, the pharmacy, just like heroin, and you bought it. It was called Pervitin. It fueled the Nazi war machine. So it's a pretty simple thing for, the cartels or whoever else to press some meth into pills and mark them like Adderall. Just like when you took all of the people who were, addicted to hydrocodone or oxycodone, and, they were cut off by their doctors. Same idea. It wasn't, it's not the exact same thing. It's not the pharmacies running out. The doctors are still very happy to hand out as much Adderall as you can shovel down your throat. Any person, really. So they don't have that problem. But if there is a problem of not being able to get enough drugs that people need, because you've got these addicts, you've got millions and millions and millions of them, if they don't have enough to shovel down their gullet, they're going to have to seek alternative sources. So it really is the same story as the so-called opioid epidemic. And so in that case, what did the dealers do? Did they make proper generic versions of hydrocodone and oxycodone or OxyContin. Well, they tried to do that for a while, but that's expensive. And so they turned to fentanyl because that was more potent and it was cheaper, and so therefore you could smuggle it in smaller quantities and then dilute it and end up with more product. It just, it made sense if you're in an industry where you have to deal with smuggling. And so when it comes to making fake Adderall for the black market, meth is cheap and easy to make. I don't know how to make it. I understand that it's dangerous. I once had a neighbor whose house blew up because they were cooking meth. It made a very big fire, very hot. Thankfully, didn't burn our house down. But what I know is that if that buffoon and his, I don't even want to get into their family. They were not bright people. If they were able to do it, albeit unsuccessfully, it's got to be a pretty cheap and easy thing to make. I don't know what would go into making Adderall, but my guess is the tools and the skill set and the materials are not as widely available as meth. And so it's not hard to see how we're going to have another decade that has a lot in common with the past decade, but you change the drug. And I don't know, I know there might be a lot of hysteria and propaganda regarding drug addiction, but I think there are enough people in the world who are drug addicts to make me think that, this idea of drug addiction isn't all a psyop. It's not all moral panic. It's not all hysteria. A lot of drug advocates, like to tell us that that's the case, that, you can have perfectly healthy and moderate recreational use of drugs like heroin and meth. But my guess is that the people who are able to walk that line are in the minority. And even if it's something like, alcohol, where a lot of people use alcohol, pretty much everyone, even if they don't do it, for the purpose of, drinking, you're still going to ingest alcohol at some level. A rather small percentage of those people are alcoholics, but it still works as a proof of concept that such a thing does exist. And so something like methamphetamine, I think, even though I don't have the exact numbers, we can safely say that as a percentage of overall meth users, a higher percentage of meth users are addicts than, let's say, the percentage of people who use alcohol who are alcoholics. And since so many people now use Adderall, and everyone is going to encounter this shortage, if you have even hundreds of thousands of these Adderall addicts who have to turn to pills that they think are Adderall, and they probably pay good money for them, like they're Adderall, and then they end up being methamphetamine, which is, according to the Adderall advocates, crosses the blood-brain barrier and is therefore, much more dangerous and addictive, compared to Adderall. Well, there's a good chance that these folks, a certain percentage of them, will become meth addicts. So that's just what I see here. I mean, it might take a year, it might take 5 years. But if this continues, if these white women aren't able to get their fix, they're going to find a way. And yes, I know it's not all women, but women in general are more likely to believe in this whole idea of medicating their so-called mental health. There are plenty of soy boys taking Adderall too. And then I'm sure that there are some people who, I don't want to just, crap all over them. I'm sure there are some people who have, like, an actual mental impairment that makes it very hard for them to focus, who are, that is truly debilitating, who are made able to live a normal life thanks to this drug. I'm sure there are people like that who exist. But those people are not in the millions and millions. It's not all of these whiny bitches on TikTok. These are just lazy people with no self-discipline, for the most part. I mean, you hear it in the testimonials. People, these people talking about how, oh, if I can't get my fix, then, I'm going to show up for work late, and I'm going to be, and I won't be able to focus on tasks, and, and it's like just very normal pedestrian problems that an ordinary person before the development of these psychoactive drugs, would have just dealt with through being disciplined. These white women are just used to popping a pill to make all of their problems go away. And when that pill disappears, they're going to search for anything, something, to replace it. Nicotine makes a lot of people feel better. We don't treat smoking like it's this, great virtuous thing that's so wonderful. I don't hate people who smoke. I don't wish them ill. But I'm not going to, treat chain smoking like it's a virtue. You don't deserve, a medal because you pop pills all day. And I also do get some, I don't want to say pleasure because that sounds really nasty, but I do lack sympathy for the managerial class, and that is really who's affected by this. It is those sorts of men and women who are most likely to solve their own personal shortcomings through medication. People with empty lives who live in apartments, usually with a cat or maybe a small dog. Although in the case of some of these white women, they have quite large dogs, if you know what I mean. These are people who almost never have children, and in fact tend to be children well into natural adulthood themselves. And so I do think it's healthy for society if a lot of these people lose their crutch. But unfortunately, I don't think that they're going to take that opportunity to better themselves. I think that they'll probably just go smoke some meth in a back alley. So with that said, I will see you folks back here tomorrow.